For most of human history, the economy barely grew at all. Almost everyone worked the land, and the total wealth available to a society was basically capped by how much that land could produce in a given year. That output didn't change much from one generation to the next. A farmer in the year 1500 was, in most practical terms, working with roughly the same tools, the same crop yields, and the same basic constraints as a farmer 1,000 years earlier. In economic terms, the world was a zero-sum game. The pie was a fixed size, and the only way to get a bigger slice was for someone else to get a smaller one. In a world like that, the incentives are brutal but logical. If wealth can't be created, only redirected, then conquering, raiding, and taking someone else's land is a perfectly rational strategy for getting ahead. History bears this out again and again. Empires expanded by seizing farmland and labor, not by inventing new ways to grow the pie. Wars were fought over fertile river valleys and trade routes rather than new technology. And colonial powers extracted resources from distant territories precisely because taking wealth was so much easier in a stagnant economy than creating it. For thousands of years, that's more or less what happened. Societies fought each other over the same fixed resources. Inequality was extreme, and a small number of people held enormous wealth, while most others survived on whatever was left over, often just barely. Then, starting in the 18th century, something genuinely unprecedented happened. The Industrial Revolution. New machinery, better crops, better fertilizers, and eventually mechanized manufacturing didn't just make agriculture more productive, they made almost every sector of the economy more productive at once. The steam engine turned into railroads, and railroads meant goods and people could move across a continent in days instead of months, tying together markets that had previously been almost entirely separate. Between 1700 and 1870, iron production in Britain alone increased more than 100-fold. For the first time in the history of civilization, it became possible to make the pie itself bigger, not just fight over how it was sliced. And once one country demonstrated it was possible, the underlying method spread, first across Europe and North America, and eventually, unevenly but persistently, across the rest of the world. That single shift from a zero-sum world to a positive-sum one is arguably the most consequential change in the entire economic history of our species. It's why antibiotics exist to kill infections that used to be fatal, why power plants deliver on-demand electricity to homes that would once have relied on fire alone, why a phone in your pocket can reach nearly anyone on the planet instantly, why flying across an ocean is something ordinary people can casually afford, why a refrigerator can keep food edible for weeks. None of this was normal for the overwhelming majority of human history. It's normal now, but it's worth remembering how genuinely strange and recent it actually is. At the center of that transformation is one thing: innovation. Not just clever gadgets, but better solutions to problems we already knew we had, and solutions to problems we didn't even realize we had yet. That second category is easy to overlook, but genuinely important. Nobody in 1990 was frustrated by the absence of a smartphone, because the concept didn't exist yet. The problem it solved wasn't recognized as a problem until the solution made it obvious in hindsight. And innovation has a strange, self-feeding property. The more of it happens, the more new problems and desires it uncovers. A typical person in a country like Norway 250 years ago might have wanted a genuinely good pair of shoes. 150 years ago, maybe a bicycle. 80 years ago, a car. 30 years ago, an affordable plane ticket. Getting what we want has never made us stop wanting. It just moves the target further out. This new, rapidly compounding world has existed for something like 0.1% of the total span of human history, which means we're all still, in a sense, adjusting to living in it. And it comes with a consequence that feels deeply counterintuitive at first. In a genuinely positive-sum world, it is in your own personal, selfish self-interest for every other human being on the planet to be doing well. Not just the people near you, people in places you've never heard of, whose names you'll never learn. There's a real, self-interested argument for wanting the whole world to prosper, and it isn't about charity or guilt. It's about how innovation actually gets produced. Innovation, at its core, runs on the same basic logic as any market: supply and demand. On the supply side, The number of people capable of contributing new ideas, as researchers, engineers, inventors, entrepreneurs, grows every time more people get access to freedom, stability, and education. On the demand side, the market for new solutions grows every time more people have enough wealth to actually pay for them. Innovators, unsurprisingly, tend to follow incentives. When a lot of people want something and can pay for it, that's where energy and investment flow. It's part of why patent systems exist at all. They give inventors a temporary, exclusive claim on their idea precisely so that a large enough market makes the risk of inventing something worthwhile in the first place. Which means improving the lives of people who currently have the least doesn't just help them. It expands both sides of that equation simultaneously. More people with real opportunity means more potential inventors. More people with real income means a bigger market pulling those inventions into existence. Take something almost everyone has a personal stake in, curing cancer. Right now, something like 1 billion people in the world have enough wealth to meaningfully pay for advanced cancer treatment, and that demand has already pulled hundreds of billions of dollars into medical research. It's had a real effect, but cancer still kills roughly 1 in every 6 people on Earth, and the honest truth is that you might eventually be one of them. Now imagine that number wasn't 1 billion able to pay for treatment, but 4 billion, or 7. It's not obvious exactly how much faster a cure would arrive with 7 times the market demand pulling research forward, but it's very unlikely to be the same speed as now. The same logic applies well beyond medicine. Solar panels and batteries have gotten dramatically cheaper over the last 2 decades, not primarily because of a single breakthrough discovery, but because rising global demand, driven partly by wealthier, more populous markets, able to afford early, expensive versions of the technology, pulled in enough investment to fund the manufacturing scale and incremental engineering that eventually made the technology cheap enough for everyone. A poorer, smaller global market for clean energy would very plausibly mean more expensive, less advanced solar panels today, arriving on a slower timeline for everyone, including people who already have money, and demand is only half of what's being wasted. Think about how much human potential currently sits idle simply because of where someone happened to be born. The labor of a subsistence farmer in a struggling country doesn't do much for you directly. But if that farmer's circumstances improve enough that his children can go to university instead of working the same field, one of those children might end up doing cancer research, or engineering, or material science, work that could genuinely benefit you, a stranger on the other side of the planet, decades from now. Think of it this way. Talent for solving hard problems is very likely distributed roughly evenly across humanity, but opportunity to develop and apply that talent is not distributed evenly at all. Somewhere alive right now, there is very plausibly a person with the raw ability to make a major scientific breakthrough who will never get the chance to try, simply because they were born into circumstances that make survival, not research, the only realistic use of their time. Every one of those wasted potential contributions is a cost the entire world quietly pays, including people who will never know what they missed out on. Right now, the world's innovation is concentrated in a handful of wealthy hotspots. A more broadly prosperous world wouldn't just add a few new contributors, it would multiply the number of hotspots entirely, and the total research output of humanity could end up many times larger than it is today. Would we already have cured cancer in a world like that? Nobody can say for certain, but with 7 times the funding, 7 times the researchers, and a genuinely global research network instead of a few concentrated pockets of wealth, it's hard to imagine we wouldn't be significantly further along than we actually are. That's really the entire argument, distilled down. The more people who want roughly the same things you want, the more likely you are to actually get them. That's what living in a positive-sum world means in practice. You don't end up with more of the pie by keeping other places poor. You end up with more pie when poor places get richer, start contributing their own ideas, and grow the pie for everyone, including you. Like space travel? Imagine billions of additional people across Africa and Asia with the wealth and education to run their own space programs, driving demand for satellites, lunar bases, cities on Mars. It's easy to assume space exploration is naturally the domain of only 1 or 2 wealthy nations. But that's really just a reflection of where wealth happens to be concentrated right now, not some permanent fact about who's capable of contributing to it. Like being alive? A few billion more people able to pay into medical research is the kind of demand that could, quite literally, be the reason a future cure exists in time to save you. None of this means the zero-sum instinct has disappeared. Plenty of modern politics still runs on exactly that old logic, treating trade and immigration and foreign aid as if one country's gain must automatically be another's loss. That instinct made complete sense for the 10,000 years or so when it was actually true. It just happens to be a genuinely bad guide to how wealth gets created in a world that runs on innovation instead of fixed land. And the data on global growth since the Industrial Revolution makes that difference pretty hard to argue with. It's genuinely in your interest, your own, personal, entirely self-serving interest, for people everywhere to become better off. And the faster the world gets there, the better it is for you specifically, not just for them. Whatever your actual motivation ends up being, altruistic or purely selfish, or some mix of both, you've never quite untangled. Working to make the world better turns out to be one of the rare projects where the incentives point the same direction for absolutely everyone involved, for them and for you.